Shanti sister, how are you?
I'm fine.
Okay, today we are going to see the second chapter, Al Baqarah, which means the heifer uh, in Quran. We are going to read the 111th verse. Uh, okay, sister, you can start reading 111th verse.
And they say, none we will enter heaven unless he is a Jew or a Christian. These are their wishes. Say, produce your proof if you are truthful.
Yes. Okay, sister. It's an interesting conversation. Uh, Actually, God says to Muhammad through Jibril that uh, Christians and Jews say, of course, everybody says, even Muslims says, unless you become Muslim, you can't enter heaven. Unless you become Christian, you can't enter heaven. Unless you become Jew, you can't enter heaven. But but he says that's not true. This is just their imagination. If it is true, produce your proof. Prove it that others can't enter. Every religion claims that only they can enter heaven. So, if that's true, produce the proof. So, how can Christians prove that only Christians will enter heaven? How can Hindus prove that only they can enter heaven? How can Muslims prove that only they can enter heaven? How can Jainism, Buddhism, uh, Judaism can prove that only they can enter heaven? Because in reality, none of them knows what heaven is, where heaven is, what the eligibility to enter heaven is. Because it is only God who knows about heaven. None other than God knows about it. So God Himself comes in the end to give this knowledge about heaven and hell. So this is a 5,000 year time cycle that takes place in this very earth that we live in. This very world was heaven in the beginning for the first 2500 years, and now it is hell. The reason it was heaven in the beginning was because none of them knows what lust is, what anger, greed, attachment, or ego is. They are absolutely free from vices, absolutely free from committing sins. They were as pure as a newborn child, as Jesus Christ says in the Bible. Now, the reason for that is they were soul conscious. They didn't consider themselves to be this perishable body. Instead, they consider themselves to be this imperishable soul that shines like a tiny star in between the eyebrows, which is why Hindus have this habit of applying tilak here. But they do not know that we souls exist here. So it is the soul that sees through the eyes, speaks through the mouth, listens through the ear, performs work through hands and legs. They were fully aware of it all the time. So their conscious is focused only in the soul. Even when they talk with each other, they look at each other's soul and not the body. That's the reason they did not get attracted to the physical body. So, what happens after 2500 years is they go out of soul consciousness. They get distracted by the worldly attraction. So, in heaven, while they were soul conscious, they were constantly blissful and peaceful because the very nature of the soul is blissfulness and peacefulness. So it comes from within, so they don't need anything external to derive happiness for the first 2500 years. Although it was heaven, they didn't get addicted to anything. They didn't want to grab anything and make their own. So that's why it was heaven not only for humans but also for all animals. Even lions and cows take water from the same pond as mentioned in Bible and Quran. That's because not only humans, no animals will have the intention to hurt others. Every animal and human feed only on plants for their food. They don't eat animals. Now look at all religion. Everybody eat animals. How can they enter heaven? That's the proof. Because they don't possess the qualities that residents of heaven possessed in the beginning. Okay, where have they all gone? They haven't gone anywhere. They undergo rebirth after rebirth and they enter hell, started experiencing sorrow mainly because they experience body consciousness instead of soul consciousness. So they seek pleasure from outside through their senses. So everything that we get from outsiders is going to deceive you. They are perishable in nature. As a result, the pleasure that you get from external things, be it human or animals or birds or nature, whatever it is, so that's not going to last for long. Although it starts to give pleasure initially, it ends up giving more and more pain. So, but still, human doesn't realize that, and they seek out pleasure externally. As a result, they start committing more and more sins out of lust, anger, greed, attachment, and ego. That is why the world is filled with rape, murder, uh, stealing, everything. As a result, God punishes us in the form of diseases, poverty, natural calamities, everything. So God comes in the end. Actually, God doesn't punish us. That is something we should mention here. Uh, it is our past sins that we get punished as a result of the consequences of the sin. So God stays away from that. God doesn't protect you just because you are a Christian from punishment, just because you are a Muslim, just because you are a Hindu. No, God doesn't show any partiality. He just stays away from this. God is just one. He resides in the supreme abode. This is called Parandam by Hindus and Parlok by Christians. This is the golden red colored light world. And God is also a point of light, just like soul. He is also a soul. That's why he is called Supreme Soul. He comes just 100 years before the destruction of this old world, sinful world, and says about the destruction, and also he gives the good news that after destruction, this world will be renewed into heaven again. But for you to get into heaven, you need to imbibe the divine qualities you originally possessed while you were in heaven in the beginning. So God teaches us daily through an old man's body. He names him Brahma. The knowledge that we get from Brahma is called Murali. That is available absolutely free of cost in all Brahma Kumaris Rajok meditation centers. So the essence of that teaching is to consider ourselves to be soul again, but we just can't concentrate on our soul for a long time because our souls have become so weak that it creates more and more waste thoughts automatically. So we no longer have control over our mind. So God says, consider yourselves to be soul and connect your mind with the Supreme Soul who shines like a tiny star in the golden red colored sky. The more you remember God as a point of light, our soul will be filled with more and more divine power from God. As a result, we become as pure as God Himself. So, thereby, we get rid of all the external attraction. Thereby, we can conquer lust, anger, greed, attachment, and ego. So, we become eligible to enter heaven because we possess qualities that deities originally possessed in heaven. So that is the essence of God's teaching. The reason no religion can enter heaven is because no religion teaches how to become pure. No religion teaches anything about God. So what we see in Quran is the teaching of Muhammad or Jibril's teaching through Muhammad. What we see in Bible is the teaching of the pure soul called Christ through Jesus. What we see in Buddhist religion is the teaching of the Buddha soul through Siddhartha. So none of them claims themselves to be God, and they are true. God is just one. His name is Allah by Muslims, Heavenly Godfather by Christians, God Shiva by Hindus. Actually, his name is Shiva. God himself says his name is Shiva. That's why in Bible it is mentioned as Jehovah, which sounds similar. So he says, you have to remember me constantly so that you will derive that constant pleasure from within, because that's the true nature of soul. Just because you get lost into the external surroundings, you no longer have the ability to stay within. So that's why we connect with God and get that power. So now, whatever we possess now, that will be taken by soul to the next birth. That is the reason God gives us this teaching. Now, just like residents of heaven called deities, whom Hindus worship till now because they were very pure. They don't know what lust is. Even childbirth takes place through uh, the thought of father and mother. So the husband and wife will have the thought of having a child, and the wife gets pregnant. That's it. There is no question of lust there. That is the reason Hindus worship those deities. Now God says, it is you who were deities in the beginning, and you need to become deity again. So now we don't eat non-vegetarian food just like deities. We don't indulge in lust just like deities. We don't have anger, greed, attachment, and ego just like deities. But not everybody who takes knowledge through Brahma become like that. There will definitely be number wise in their effort. So according to their effort, the status will be determined. If they have become 100% pure, just like God, they will attain the highest status in heaven, which is the King Narayan status. So that's the reason in South India they celebrate the opening ceremony of heaven in Narayan temple, because he was the first king of heaven. It's the kingdom. So we become eligible by listening to God's knowledge daily, that's available through Brahma Kumari's meditation center, which is absolutely free of cost. We can also get that through YouTube and several websites. We'll be giving the links of some of them, and you can also Google it yourself. So that's the direct teaching of God. Only when you receive the direct teaching of God, you know about the divine qualities of heaven that we need to imbibe in order for us to get into heaven. But none of the religions created by humans has anything to do with heaven. Religious founders came here just to create their religion in hell. So it is because of various religions with various belief systems, they fight with each other because everything is different. How can God create a religion with one faith and create another religion with totally different faith and create another religion with another faith? Obviously, they can't coexist. That's the reason there have been quarrel throughout the world. But in heaven, even cow and lion drink water together, because humans don't have the thought, don't have the negative thought or waste thoughts, because they have total control over their mind. How do they get it? By being in remembrance of God all the time. But no religion says anything about God. Then how can they remember God? They don't know that what will happen by remembering God. So it is by remembering God that we will have the strength to get rid of the vices, to get rid of the bad food habits. So that's how we become eligible to enter heaven. This is the proof that no religion can enter heaven. But Christians can't prove it, Muslims can't prove it, Hindus can't prove it. Only we Brahmakumaris can prove it because we get knowledge directly from God. So so if you are truthful, prove it. We are proving it because we are learning directly from the truth, which is God. So that's it. Now, yes, sister. Now you can read 112th verse.
In fact, whoever submits himself to God and is a doer of good will have his reward with his Lord. They have nothing to fear, nor shall they grieve.
Yes. So, so that's the thing. In the previous verse, he says, prove that only Christians and Jews will enter heaven. But we have proved they can't enter heaven because they don't know what sin is, what charitable actions are. So, whatever you do out of body consciousness will be considered sin. Whatever you do as a soul, by considering yourself to be the soul, that will be the considered charitable action. And also, we have to give this teaching to others. That's another charitable action that will be accumulated in your account, which you will reap the reward of it in heaven. So that's what they say in 112. Whoever submits himself to God. So, uh, submission to God doesn't mean praying to God. Because people of all religions, they pray to God in order to achieve something. I need to study good. I need to get married. I need to build a house. I need to become a billionaire. So they have all these requests to God. So that's why they pray. Or they want somebody not to die. They want somebody to recover from illness. That's why they pray. But that's not submission to God. Submission to God is to act according to His will. How will we know His will unless He comes and He introduces Himself and gives His teaching? So that's what God is doing. So only when God comes, He comes only in the end through Brahma. And this Brahma is called Adam by Christians and Muslims. So everybody knows it is only Adam and Eve that enters heaven, which means God must have given the teachings to enter heaven only through Adam. But that is missing in Quran and Bible and Torah because God only comes in the end. So uh, this last 100 years can be considered the end of the world or the beginning of the world because this is where we receive the teachings from God. But nobody knows about it. No religion knows about it. That's why they wonder when we say Allah Himself has come and gives His divine teachings. So now He says the difference between good and bad. Whatever you perform in soul consciousness is good. If you're soul conscious, you will not have lust, anger, greed, attachment, or ego, and you won't even have any wasteful thoughts. You will be focusing only on the imperishable soul and not on anything perishable. Everything, including this perishable, this body is perishable. Whatever you see is perishable. So we no longer see them or get attracted to them so that they don't deceive us. So we are free from this sorrow. So, how do we become that? By remembering God as a point of light as much as possible. So, it is by remembering God, our soul will be filled with power and you will know it. Even at the time of distress, like the death of loved ones, you will be experiencing blissfulness, which is something people can't even imagine. Because we develop relationship only with God. and not with anybody. God is our father, mother, husband, wife, son, best friend. Everything is just with God, not with humans. So when you no longer depend on humans for anything, for love or comfort, then you will not be selfish. So none of your actions will be selfish. So you will be an embodiment of love just like God. So you will be as loving as God in your actions, words, and in your thoughts. That's how you become the doer of God. Doer of good, taught by God. One, so this good doing. So if you do good now, according to the law of karma, you will be getting the reward. So God gives you the teachings of karma. That's the only work of God to differentiate between good and bad. So God says, when you do nothing but good, you don't have to worry about the punishment that's to happen in the end. Even natural calamities won't affect you. Because when you are in remembrance of God, if you are surrounded by tsunami, even it won't have the power to attack you. So that's the reason in Bible and Quran it is mentioned that Moses, while he was walking through the sea was split into two, and he was walking in the middle. So it didn't happen as such, but the message is even natural calamities won't attack you. So you won't die like others out of hunger or during flood or natural calamities. Instead, you will be in remembrance of God all the time, so that you will be leaving this body very happily. Only then you will enter the heaven, which is filled with happiness. And another thing is we don't we consider everybody just as souls and not as body. So all souls are sons of God, which means we all are just brothers, not even sisters, because it is only body that is boy or girl, but soul is just son of God, because everybody inherits the property which is the kingdom of heaven from God. That is why we are sons of God, because during the ancient times it is common that only sons inherit the property of the father. That's why God calls us the sons. So when we are surrendering ourselves to God, which means we constantly remember none but one God. We don't remember our physical relationships like father, mother, son, daughter, brothers, friends, or any relations. We constantly remember only about God, and we constantly have this aim of entering heaven and become Sri Narayan. So that's the only thing our mind is quite obsessed with. So that is the reason we will be free from grief, because we are no longer attached to any perishable humans. So no matter what happens to them, we will have mercy for them. We may help them, but we will not grieve about their condition or their death, because we know death is just for the body, not for the soul. So our duty is to give the souls the teachings about the soul and the Father of all souls, the Supreme Father God. So once you do that, your reward will be given in heaven. That is the highest status, the highest king of heaven, which is Sri Narayan post. So you will. So whatever happened to your family or anybody, you won't worry about it, because they are no longer your family. They are just brother souls, just like the others. So only when you are able to detach yourself from all the relationships, then when something happens to them, that will not affect you. So you will not worry. Instead, you will be constantly in remembrance of God, not begging Him to save them, but you will be just in remembrance of God as always. So you will be blissful. So that blissfulness creates the vibration of blissfulness in your atmosphere. So that will have the impact of anyone near you. So even though they have the deepest sorrow due to the loss of their loved ones, they will immediately experience pleasure and they just can't stop experiencing. They would wonder what happened. So that's because you are blissful. So that's the work of the children of God, that is, as we Brahma Kumaris. So that is all about 112th verse. So that's it for today, my dear brothers and sisters. Thank you so much for watching. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti.
Om Shanti, sister, for spending your valuable time in our show. Om Shanti. Thank you, sister. Om
Om
Shanti.
Shanti, brother.